Shooting in broad daylight can be very challenging, so there are 3 things that I highly recommend.
Hey everyone, it's Steven here for another session of our Sundance Collab mobile filmmaking course presented by Xiaomi. So far, we've covered some smartphone shooting techniques and how to prepare for your shoot. In today's session, we are going to study some of the most common shooting scenarios for once you're actually on set. For this session, we are actually going to be observing a Xiaomi Studios production led by our Xiaomi Creator Chen Lu.
Hey everyone.
We're here in Beijing today shooting outside. How's it going, man?
I'm good. How about you?
Pretty good. Chen Lu is a Shanghai-based director who recently graduated from NYU Tisch and has created commercial work for brands around the world. We will be observing him on the set of a short video created for this course. We are actually shooting this video at the same studio where we are shooting this course, so we have chosen 2 different scenarios here, one bright daylight scenario and one dark interior scenario. From these 2 scenarios, we will try to create a short video out of them, as well as show how we take on these different shooting scenarios in different ways.
So we are on set and getting ready for our shoot for today.
So Chen Lu, would you like to share your setup for this scene?
For sure. Shooting in broad daylight can be very challenging, especially on the phone, since phones tend not to handle direct sunlight very well. As in Beijing today, we are having a very cloudy day, so we are actually putting a lot of HMIs in the back to mimic the sun. So there are 3 things that I highly recommend. 1. Make sure that you are using an ND filter on your phone. Remember that you cannot change the aperture on almost any phones. So NDs are necessary to make sure your shot is exposed properly, the shutter speed is correct, and the shot is looking the way you want it to. The second thing I recommend is not directly shooting into the sun. Phone lenses do not create the most beautiful lens flares, and that combined with phone stabilization can create a weird bouncy orb in your shot. Sometimes it's unavoidable, but if you can try repositioning your shot so that you are not shooting directly into the sun. I personally find shooting diagonally to the sun with a phone can create a nice look, and the flares look even nice. Third, make sure that you test the phone you are using and see if you want to either underexpose or overexpose. Every phone is different, so I recommend you test it out, as different phone sensors and algorithms will maintain different information. I personally like to overexpose when shooting on the phone, as I find it is easier to maintain details in shadows rather than in the highlights. On this particular phone, I really like the exposure verification mode, as it really helps me dial in the right exposure.
So now that we've gone through all of those tips, let's see what the results look like.
So now we have moved indoors for a dark interior shot. Phones are notorious for struggling in low light conditions, so there's a few things you can do to counter that. The first thing is using artificial lighting to your advantage. The main thing you should look out for when shooting on a phone is the loss of quality and the lack of detail to work with in post. One way I recommend that you counter this is to introduce artificial lighting into a shot. Not only will you find that it makes the quality of the shot better, it will also add a lot more dynamic elements to the shot, and can even bring in some color so you don't have to do so in post. Remember that when you enter post, you will have less room to work with, so on-set lighting, as we are having right now, is very important so that you can get your shot looking as great as possible right now. And that actually brings me to my second point, which actually doesn't have to do anything with lighting. Make sure that you bring in as many dynamic elements on set as possible to achieve the look that you want. This can be props or directions, anything that will make your shot look more dynamic in camera. I find that it is hard to really work with the footage and create something spectacular in post through color grading or even special effects if you have less data to work with. So as you can see here, on this shoot we are shooting in a rather dark room, but we'll use this to our advantage. In this room, we have full control over the lighting, so we'll make sure that we use the lights to expose the shot correctly as well as creatively light the scene. Because this room is rather small, we've decided to go with a more nimble shooting setup with a lightweight gimbal to capture the movement of the dancer. Today's shoot has been rather rushed as Steven has put me into test of creating something from these two locations. But actually, this is where mobile filmmaking strong points come into play. Because we can test new ideas on the go with the phone and we can be much more nimble with the setup, a smartphone was the perfect tool for this kind of job. If you are doing this kind of run and gun shooting, here is a good tip to keep in mind. Make sure that you are monitoring your footage on the phone screen. Sometimes you will find that the color you see is slightly different from what the phone interprets. So make sure that you keep an eye on this. One other thing, because we wanted to make sure that this particular shot is exposed correctly without losing any quality in shadows or highlights, we actually decided to add a whole lot of haze to the shot in order to balance out the lighting in the shot more. Plus, it adds a dreamy atmosphere to the scene.
This is awesome, Chen Lu. Thanks again.
No problem.
So, what about today's shoot?
I think it went really well.
Me too. We'll see when we see the final edit. Thanks again for joining us for another session of Sundance Collab Mobile Filmmaking presented by Xiaomi. Stay tuned for the next episode as we head into the editing room and pull together a film.